Hi and welcome to Art Club. Today we're featuring a French artist. His name is Henri Matisse, and we're going to read this book, Henri's Scissors, by Jeanette Winter. On the first page of the book, there's actually a quote by Romare Bearden. He was the artist that we featured 2 weeks ago on Art Club. His quote says, "Matisse got as close as one can get to heaven with a pair of scissors." That's because Matisse primarily made his art by cutting shapes out of paper and other materials. That's what our project is going to be today. We're going to be cutting shapes out of paper and foam sheets and gluing them onto a black chipboard. So let's get started with our book, Henri's Scissors. In a small weaving town in France, a young boy named Henri Emile Benoit Matisse watched his mother paint china. He wanted to paint too. He drew pictures in the sand, and he drew pictures in his school books. When Henri was a young man, he drew pictures in his law books and on contracts, deeds, and wills. Henri was sick in bed with appendicitis one winter. His mother gave him a box of paints, and he painted until he was well. He kept on painting, forgot about law, and left his small town to be an artist in Paris. Henri painted pictures day after day and year after year. He was happy, and his paintings made people happy. But when Matisse was an old man, he fell ill. So ill he couldn't paint. So ill he couldn't sit up. So ill he could only lie in bed and sleep. His paintings floated by in his dreams. Matisse finally opened his eyes, and they were filled with sadness. Now he must remain in bed or use a wheelchair. Would he ever have the energy to paint again? When Matisse was strong enough to travel, he went to the seaside. The sea air might help him get well. Before long, he sat up. A little later, he drew. Then one day, Matisse picked up a pair of scissors and cut out shapes from painted paper. He was drawing with scissors. A pair of scissors is a wonderful instrument. Matisse cut paper all day. My pleasure in cutting things out grows even greater. Why didn't I think of it earlier? His assistants painted paper for him all day. It seems to me that I am in a second life. Paper cutouts covered his walls. One evening, Matisse lay in bed and drew the faces of his grandchildren on the ceiling with a piece of chalk tied to a long pole. As he fell asleep, they looked down on him and saw his dreams. They saw the shapes that surrounded him in sleep. As time went on, Matisse cut bigger and bigger shapes. They filled his seaside room with color. You see, as I'm obliged to remain often in bed, I have made a little garden all around me where I can walk. There are leaves, fruits, a bird. I am deeply contented, happy. Then one night, Matisse walked out into his paper garden, and the rainbow of shapes cradled the old artist and carried him into the heavens. Are some of the stars we see at night coming to us from Henri's scissors? Perhaps. And that's Henri's Scissors. Many great books at the library about Henri Matisse. Most of them are in our biography section. We have this great book, Mr. Matisse and His Cutouts. Colorful Dreamer, the story of Henri Matisse. Matisse, the king of color, that was a nickname for him. And Matisse's Garden. If you want to learn more about the life of Henri Matisse and his art, come in and pick up some great books. Now let's get started with our work of art, inspired by Henri Matisse. For our Matisse-inspired art, we're going to start with a black chipboard. You can use a ruler or a piece of paper as your guide. I just want to make 2 straight lines down the length of the chipboard. So you could see 1 line there. And then I'll do 1 more. I just want to divide the chipboard into 3 sections. Just like Matisse, all we really need for this are a pair of scissors and some glue. We're going to use scissors as our instrument of art. You should have strips of paper and foam sheets in your art kit. What we're going to do now is just cut out shapes. You don't have to do the exact shapes that Matisse used to cut. You can cut any shapes you like. In general, though, he did like to cut birds, flowers, leaves, and spirals. And he even used his paper scraps and glued them onto his canvases. Here are some more shapes that Matisse used to cut. He would cut circles, hearts, again more birds, leaves. You can cut stars, even waves. So you can get creative. I'm going to start with my green construction paper. I'm just going to cut a few leaf shapes out of the construction paper. If you like, you can draw the shapes on the paper before you cut them. I'm going to cut freehand, just like Matisse did. As we saw in the book that we read, Matisse considered the scissor his instrument of art. I've cut quite a few leaves. I'm going to put these aside and cut a few more shapes. I'm also going to use the green sheet to cut some circles. There's one flower shape. Kind of looks like the one that's in this book. Now I'm going to cut a spiral out of the green paper. You can start by cutting a big circle. Then you just keep cutting around the circle until you get to the middle. There's the spiral. Now I'm going to take my red foam sheet. I think I'm going to start by cutting a star shape. There's my red star shape. You can also take the scraps from your cutouts and use those. Next, I'm going to take my yellow foam sheet. I think I'm going to cut some leaves. And maybe I'll cut a bird out of the yellow foam sheet. Here's my bird. I'm also going to cut a spiral in the yellow foam sheet. Now remember, to make a spiral, you start with a circle and you just cut into the circle until you get to the middle. And then you have a spiral. Next, I'm going to take my blue paper and cut waves. Now I'm going to take a piece of pink paper and cut a flower. There's my flower. I'm also going to cut a pink heart. There's my heart. You can cut little scraps of paper as well. Let's cut another bird. There's my bird. Now I'm going to cut another star. There's my other star. Let's cut some more flowers. Maybe I'll make another spiral. There's my spiral. Just keep cutting as many shapes as you like. I'm going to use all of these shapes when I glue everything on the chipboard. Now I have all these shapes that I cut out from our foam sheets and colored paper. The next step is to glue these onto the black chipboard. You can glue them on however you like. You can even overlap the pieces. Just put glue on each shape and glue it onto the board however you like. We have plenty of shapes to choose from. I think I'm finished gluing. While we wait for this to dry, let's learn a little bit more about Henri Matisse's life. Henri Matisse was born on December 31st, 1869, in northern France. He was a French artist known for his use of color and original ideas. As a young man, Henri traveled to Paris to study law. In 1889, he returned home to work in a law office. It was around this time that he had an attack of appendicitis. To make the long recovery more enjoyable, his mother gave him a paint box. It was then, at the age of 21, that Matisse discovered painting and decided to become an artist. In 1891, Matisse traveled to Paris to study art. And in 1897, he was introduced to Impressionism and to the work of Vincent van Gogh. Matisse was fascinated by this new and interesting way of painting, and his style changed completely. In 1905, Matisse exhibited his work at a group show with other artists. The show brought him sudden fame. In the 1940s, Matisse began creating cut paper collages, often rather large pictures. He called this new technique painting with scissors. Henri Matisse died on November 3rd, 1954, at the age of 84. Matisse was considered one of the leading figures of modern art.